So I've been noticing a big Rose theme, connecting a few things, and in this video I want to talk about how in some way it links with Charles Manson. A bunch of topics will be covered today that might not appear to connect, but if you watch this entire video you'll understand where I'm coming from. You'll see some brief clips, some imagery on the screen, and that should help illustrate my points. So for this video it would be better to watch instead of just listen. And I will be sure to pin a message in the comment section with some timestamps. By the way, big shout out to Dan Barrett. I told him about the Rose theme I was onto, and he informed me that Chαrlιe Rose was in the news just after Charles Manson died. Apparently, he got fired from CBS News and PBS following sexual allegations. So, let's start with some footage of when Chαrlιe Rose interviewed Charles Manson.
When we sit here and talk to you, people wonder, where did Charlie Manson come from? What do you... Let me finish this thought. They said, we're going to help the misused children. I said, well, if you're going to help the abused children, what about these penitentiaries across the country? Aren't they abused children too? Or did you forget those? Charlie Manson then was an abused child. Every man in the penitentiary. We're not talking about every man. We're talking about you. I also explored the link of his family to the era of hippies, peace, love, and flower power. Who is Charlie Manson? Charlie Manson's whoever he's allowed to be. Whoever you make out of him, I guess. See, there's a lot more in the world than you know about. See, boy, there's a lot that sure there is. Sure there is. What do you say to those people who say Charlie Manson is a psychopath? So okay, that bother you? No, there's a whole lot of us nowadays.
So again, that was Charlie Manson and Chαrlιe Rose. Chαrlιe Rose's birthday will be important to this, but we'll get more into that later. His full name, Chαrlιe Rose, Charles Pete Rose Jr. So that got me thinking about the baseball player Pete Rose. And wouldn't you know, Pete Rose was also known as Charlie Hustle. Let's watch this quick clip.
Charlie Hustle had long won everyone's respect. He was the all-American icon of hard, fair play. Then the whistle blew. Instead of Charlie Hustle, we had... Charlie Hustle had long won everyone's respect. He was the all-American icon of hard, fair play. Then the whistle blew. Instead of Charlie Hustle, we had Charlie the Hustler, as Rose was banned, the love of his life.
Well, there's a story behind the nickname Charlie Hustle, which I won't get into right now, but I will point out that for the majority of his career, he played for the Cincinnati Reds, and they used the big letter C in their logo. And in the NATO phonetic alphabet, the name Charlie represents the letter C.
Sir, we can go in there tomorrow at dawn. There's always a good offshore breeze in the morning. I don't know, sir. What is it, soldier? Well, I mean, it's pretty hairy in there. It's Charlie's point. Charlie, don't surf!
In my previous video, I talked about Axl Rose, the lead singer of Guns N' Roses. And he was on tour a while back. He used to wear Charles Manson shirts. He had the face of Charles Manson on the front and the words "Charlie don't surf" on the back. By the way, the Charles Manson song "Look at Your Game Girl" was covered by Axl Rose and included as a hidden track on the Guns N' Roses album Spaghetti Incident. Now, some of you might recognize Charlie Don't Surf from the movie Apocalypse Now, starring Robert Duvall and Martin Sheen. Talk about his son, Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen was in a show called 2.5 Men where he plays a character, Charlie Harper, who has a next-door neighbor that's a stalker. Her name is Rose. All right, next we got to talk about his father, Martin Sheen, who, according to Wikipedia, became known because of his movie. The subject was roses.
We talked about the years that led from Ohio to New York and then to Hollywood. Our conversation began with a story of how he got his role in The Subject Was Roses.
It's sort of a strange coincidence. I had auditioned, and of course, several years later, when he was going to direct The Subject Was Roses, he called me in. Yeah, you remember me. And the story was strong. Yes. For my own part, it was the first major part I played in the film.
So like I said, he first became known, according to Wikipedia, because of that. And then his son played the character Charlie Harper, who had the stalker, Rose. And then Axl Rose covered Charles Manson's song and wore the shirt, the Charlie Don't Serve shirt. Again, Charlie Sheen's father, Martin Sheen, not only was he in that movie where they said Charlie Don't Serve, but he was also in The Subject Was Roses. That was one of his first films. But the birthday of, because we're going to talk about the birthday of Charlie Rose and how it connects with Robert Duvall and Charles Manson. Remember, Robert Duvall was the one that delivered the line, Charlie Don't Surf. Right? He was next to Martin Sheen's character. But yeah, Charlie Don't Surf, that was a line delivered by Robert Duvall. Robert Duvall shares a birthday with Marilyn Manson and Charlie Rose. At least according to Wikipedia. Robert Duvall, born the 5th of January. Charlie Rose, born the 5th of January. Of course, it was different years. But yeah, Robert Duvall, Marilyn Manson, and Charlie Rose, all born 5th of January. Remember, I talked about Charlie Rose in the beginning, where he kept on. He had a pretty famous interview with Charles Manson. He kept on calling him Charlie Manson. And Marilyn Manson, obviously, he took his name from Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson. The Beauty and the Beast, if you will. So yeah, Marilyn Manson, man, son of man. This is Charles Manson. His followers basically looked at him like he was the next Jesus. And the interesting thing about that, especially connecting the Charlie and the Rose theme, is that Rose is a symbol of Mary, like Mother Mary. The rose. Think of rosary beads. I'm not going to get into that whole thing. I don't really have slides to show you, but I grew up Catholic, and the rose is a symbol of Mary. Of course, we're talking about Mother of Jesus, Son of Man. And speaking of Mary, you can't really talk too much about Charles Manson, or you don't read too many articles without hearing about Roman Polanski. So, his wife and others were killed, and Sharon Tate, his wife, and she was carrying his baby. And Roman Polanski, not long before the Tate murders, he was responsible for the movie Rosemary's Baby. Rosemary. Again, the Rose. Our Lady of the Rose. You just look that up. Our Lady of the Rose. You're going to see pictures of Mother Mary. Marilyn Manson. He just come out with a new album on 9/11. Speaking of 9/11, we think about New York. Of course, the state flower of New York is the rose. Call that a coincidence if you like. But I believe they talked about New York in the interview with Martin Sheen, Charlie Sheen's dad, where he says something about from Ohio to New York to Hollywood. Yeah. Coincidence. Of course, Marilyn Manson at one point was, if I read this correctly, he was engaged. He had a heavy relationship with Rose McGowan. I don't think that's happening anymore, but she's been in the news lately. But yeah, speaking of the Rose thing, and Marilyn Manson's new album, We Are Chaos. He came out with his video for the title track. I think it was Tisha B'Av actually, but in that video, right where he says, "Once you've inhaled death, everything else is perfume." Right then, or just near the beginning of the song, you see like a Marilyn Manson face. It's kind of like a skull, and then a rose grows out of his head. His first wife had a name that obviously it was similar to Rose. Rosalie? It might be Rosalie. Rosalie Jean Willis, I believe is how you pronounce it. But it's Rosalie. And there's another theme with the Charlie and the Rose. But yeah, there really is something to this Rose theme and Chàrlie Manson. And I'll leave some links, but also, like I said, I'll pin a comment with some timestamps. I didn't set this out in a specific order. It's just to help you, because I talked about a lot of stuff here, and I don't want it to be too confusing. I've never seen. I talked about Rosemary's Baby. Again, that was a Roman Polanski film. Roman Polanski's wife and baby died, of course. But yeah, I've never seen that film, but I feel like there's something to it. I kind of don't want to watch it, but I mean, just the title alone, Rose, Mary. Again, Rose is a symbol for Mary, the Rosary, Our Lady of the Rosary, Miracle of the Roses, Guns N' Roses, Son of Man, Man's Son, Mary Lynn, Man's Son. He almost married Rose McGowan. So yeah, Rose. Charlie Rose. Charlie Don't Surf. That was in the movie Apocalypse Now. Of course, people talk about race war, apocalyptic race war. Robert Duvall said Charlie Don't Surf. He was born the 5th of January. Marilyn Manson, 5th of January. Charlie Rose, 5th of January. I'm going to make a playlist because I'm definitely not done talking about this. Because we could talk about gematria. We could talk about, but I'm kind of running out of time here. So, yeah, Rose.